What's the creepiest confession made on Reddit? There was a guy who confessed that he stalked a girl for a year. Hacked her love interest's computer. Planted a load of evidence that love interest had been stalking her and was into a load of weird and creepy stuff. Revealed it to girl. Helped girl to get a restraining order on love interest. Used that as his way in with the girl. And eventually married her. What the actual duck? That is some psychopathic shit right there. Sounds like he's just ahead of the curve. There was a guy who confessed to murder using that bear meme. I think that one qualifies. They also caught the guy shortly after the post. As horrendous as that confession bear was, the comments Reddit made were a comedic goldmine. The one where some guy admitted he sold his house and was living in the bunker he made in the backyard was good. Can't link now, sorry. It's the top comment in the second top AskReddit post ever. Used to be the top until that stupid kid with the damn rice combinations. I know a guy on 4chan made a game where you had to find coordinate that lead to the body of the victim of the murder he did. Edit, not cool when you mention a story like that and people confused are asking you, but which of murders are you talking about? There are so many. Ike. All you had to do was guess your post number. Not even hard with a group effort. The best part was some small police station that was closest to the burial getting hundreds of reports of a dead body in the woods from all over the country. Must have been an interesting day at work for them. Can you imagine? Wasn't there a guy who confessed to killing his sister's asshole boyfriend by making it look like the guy OD'd? Okay. Walt. Probably the confession where the redditor and a girl friend decided to experiment in bestiality with his dog. They waited until no one was home. The girl stripped down naked and bent over on all fours and changed her mind when the dog approached her. The dog then proceeded to chase her, mount her and have sex with the girl. She ended up committing suicide weeks later. Not sure of the validity of it, but still disturbed the hell out of me. Link. On the legal advice forum several months ago, it's been deleted. Someone got on there who described in detail a sexual encounter he had just had, where when he went to the bathroom to take a shower, when he came back out the woman was gone, and 20 minutes later the cops showed up. The whole story sounded like a very cliched and detailed grape scenario. A few commenters responded to the OP just to tell him to shut up, stop typing on Reddit, and go call an attorney ASAP. Then the story was deleted. The guy threatening to out the gay senator. The things people could blackmail me for. Oh wow. Edit, I am not important and none of you know me. This guy said he would wear a girl's panties, talk to her, come in them while talking to her, then put them back in her drawer suitcase. He was a luggage guy. Not sure if he was lying or not. How does he get off just by talking to them? There was a thing I read, could be true, could be not true, about prisoners that would tie a string to their pen 15. Run the string down their pants and tie it to their foot. And while they talked to female staff, tap their foot to rub their pen 15 against their pants and climax. Female staffers were warned to watch out for inmates tapping their feet while talking to them. Not exactly a Reddit confession, but there was a guy who posted on B asking if he should kill his girlfriend. They said yes. And then he responded with pictures of her body, strung up so that her teenage son would find it when he got home. As the other commenters continued to encourage him, it was reposted on Reddit and ended up making the news. That one made me sick to my stomach. Yeah, that one was pretty bad. I remember seeing the first thread, then pictures of a strangled dead girl just showed. Rare time where OP delivered. I remember when a guy used confession bear to say that he was supposed to cheat with his new wife's best friend and waited for her in a hotel, but she died in a car accident on the way there. I heard a double life story that sounded too real to be fake. Basically had two full families in two different states. He described how he'd pull it off with both families. Recently moved to a new place. My neighbor next house is 80 years old, cool guy. We clicked off pretty good since he lives alone and I being on a road for so long at a time. Truck driver, I'm single dude in mid 30s. He told me that his cousin used to be a truck driver as well. What he told me that none in his family, my neighbors, knew that he has had 2 families. One in North Dakota and other in Nebraska. Dude was married to 2 women and had kids with both. He pulled it for 20 years, neither of them knowing of the existence of the other. As a truck driver, I can totally see this being legit. Just saying, honey. I have a load to deliver too. The one where he was going to reveal an famously anti-gay senator for having a relationship with another man in 3 weeks time. But then never posted after the deadline. I'm not sure of the thread and it was months ago. But it was a child psychologist who was talking about molesting and abusing his clients. I work in mental health. So I think it was on a related subreddit. Anyways. It was super disturbing. He went into really creepy detail about how he would groom the children. Some of the things made me think he wasn't really a psychologist. But some of his knowledge made me think he did have some healthcare knowledge. I can't remember where it was from. But it was probably AskReddit since it's my most frequently ventured subreddit. Anyway. This dude confessed to taking advantage of, I think it was his cousin, and her friend's drug addiction, where he would supply them with drug money if they did sexual favors for him. And by sexual favors, he meant anything and everything. The extremely ducked up part was that he would force them to do things they didn't want to do, like forced anal sex or painful sex in general, and they just let him do it because they need to feed their addiction. He described it as having his own personal sex slaves. It was downvoted to hell and I was scarred reading that. But I think it was one of those worst confession threads like this one. But for actual confessions. I remember a guy who unknowingly admitted to molesting his cousin on AskReddit when he was asking for advice. Pretty much they were having a sleepover and he sticks his hand down her pants and starts fingering her out of nowhere. She stops talking to him after that and he's freaking out, saying she's being a bitch, and he was worried she was going to tell on him even though she definitely wanted it. After all, if she didn't, she would have stopped him. After everyone in the comments trying to explain that he abused her, he argued back saying they're wrong but then deleted his post. One where a guy admitted his friends murdered a homeless man while they were hanging out in pretty graphic detail. I vaguely remember a post where a guy was caught up in corporate espionage and it was downvoted into oblivion. But he had posted an img link with a couple photos as proof in another subreddit. The account was his regular. He posted regularly before that post. After that post, nothing. Dead. Can't remember what it was, but it was a couple years ago. Someone accidentally killed multiple tenants, maybe a family, because he left a rag or something in a bad place in the basement. He saw it before any investigation and took to so it could go back on him or business. I wish I remembered better. It had something to do with gas. Yeah. He was installing like a new heater and left the rag in a chimney or some other bad place which caused combustion gases to enter the house. There was a deleted confession of a Venezuelan redditor about killing a street thug for raping molesting his GF. This happened when Venezuela is in the first stages of entering economical apocalypse it is currently in. He described that it is futile for a Venezuelan to leave the criminal to due process, since law enforcement can't be bothered to enforce the case. The police were underpaid, and most of the time are in cahoots with the criminals. So he kidnapped the thug, brought him to a remote house, and beat the thug to death with a metal wooden bat while the thug is tied to a chair. He then disposed the body in a plastic body bag in a river or a roadside street, just like how you see it on gangster films. I remember that he wrote that the whole ordeal left him feeling apathetic and nonchalant. The original confession has been deleted to protect himself. My memory of his confession is hazy, but it was one of the first memorable and powerful thing I've read on Reddit. Perhaps another redditor would like to corroborate my story? There's probably a murder confession out there. Well, it's not exactly Reddit, although it's been posted here I'm sure, but there's a pretty well-known one from 4chan. Some guy posted pictures of a woman he'd strangled and talked about how her son was going to find her in a couple of hours when he came home from school. The guy that ducked hundreds of men to give the maids was beyond ducked up. I'm pretty desensitized and that was too much for me. Literally just read this 2 threads up and was creep. My advice on dealing with this: I always make sure I text people a week before we go out, a day before we go out, the day of, and 2-3 hours before we go out. Too much, man. Too much. That one guy who confessed to killing some guy beating the shit out of another guy in a dark alley, then went home and melted the gum. A guy on an earlier post basically confessed to being a pedophile. Reading that was more than a little sickening. Pedophiles shouldn't be hated until they actually attempt to indulge their sickness. I remember the one about a doctor who was a pedophile and voluntarily got himself chemically sterilized or whatever because he wanted to keep helping people without having the oppressive urges. There are communities of non-practicing pedophiles, people who have the urge and desire to have sex with kids, and don't, because they know it's not healthy. There was a news article I heard read, don't remember if it was online or radio, about them. They are similar to AA groups, except completely anonymous, because of the stigma. Usually hard to find, because you don't want someone who will out anyone getting in. And almost exclusively online.